Hello everyone and welcome back to the EL112 coursebook. In this video, we're going to be going over the second part of Unit 1, Unit 1B. We're going to be talking about self-organized learning. All right, so before we start, I'd like you to take a look at the three pictures that we have here and read the title in the first paragraph of an article and let me know what you think we're going to be reading. What do you think the pictures are about? And what do you think the article is about as well? All right, so I'm going to assume you now know the drill. You probably paused the video, did some thinking. All right, so personally, I think these pictures convey that there's something that's going to be talked about for education purposes. I see a classroom, I see some young students, and I also see someone that is perhaps important related to perhaps a certain technique or a way of education. We have, is knowing obsolete? Sugata Mitra loves big questions. He posed the one above during a presentation in 2013, and big questions are at the heart of his new system of education, known as SOLEEs, or SOLs, self-organized learning environments, or the school in the cloud. All right, so just based on this alone, it looks like this was a presentation in 2013, and it'll be about education and big questions, and that is the heart of basically his new system of education. Okay, so now that we have a good idea of what to expect, let's take a look at the paragraphs here and check if our answers are correct. What I would like you to do is I would like you to pause the video and go through this article one time. You don't have to look for anything specific, just get a general idea of what the article is talking about. All right, so I'm going to pretend that you've done that now. Let's go over it quickly. Dr. Mitra, the Indian physicist turned radical educationalist, is now internationally known for his hole-in-the-wall experiments, which ran for a decade in different parts of India from 1999. In these experiments, he placed computers with internet access in public places, in remote villages or slum areas, and left them to be explored by the local children without guidance from teachers or other adults. Second part, the results were remarkable. The children rapidly taught themselves and each other to carry out basic functions such as opening, closing, and saving files, and were soon surfing the net, despite the fact that some of them had never learned to read or write in English. Dr. Mitra then moved on to setting tasks, for example, finding out about DNA replication or answering moral questions, such as, is it ever necessary to tell lies? Having raised the question, he then went away for several months, leaving the children to research the answers on their own. Once again, the results exceeded expectations. For example, those who studied DNA replication went from 0% to 30% on a biotechnology test in the space of 2 months' self-instruction. The holes in the wall no longer exist, but Dr. Mitra, now professor of educational technology at Newcastle University in the United Kingdom, has a new vision, building on the earlier insights about how children can organize their own learning. He has established 7 self-organized learning environments in schools in India and England. Okay, so now that we've all read the 4 paragraphs and we have a good idea of what the article is about, let's go to exercise 3. Read the first 2 paragraphs again. What do the highlighted words refer to? Let's take a look at A and B. We have the word he and the words some of them. So let's focus on he first. Usually, the highlighted words here are called reference words, and they're called reference words because they reference something that's been already said in the text. If you notice, in the beginning of the paragraph, we have Dr. Mitra, the Indian physicist, turned yada 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 yada, and then they went on to say he placed computers with internet access. He here is talking about someone. Who is that someone? Exactly, we're talking about Dr. Mitra. Okay, so he here is a reference to a certain person that's been mentioned before. In this case, it's Dr. Mitra. So he will be Dr. Mitra. What about the second paragraph? We have some of them. The results are remarkable. The children rapidly taught themselves and each other to carry out basic functions such as opening, closing, and saving files, and were soon surfing the net, despite the fact that some of them, who are them or who is them? Who are we talking about? Again, always remember, reference words are talking about something or someone that's been already mentioned in the text before. So if we go back a little bit, some of them is talking about the children that were mentioned here. So the children is some of them had never learned to read or write in English. Okay? And I'll explain in a little bit why we use reference words in the first place. So here would be the children. So we're talking about Dr. Mitra, and the children is some of them. All right. Let's go to the focus here expression, and we'll highlight it a little bit better about what referencing is. So understanding referencing in texts. There are words and phrases that are often used to refer back to information that has already been given. You could use things like pronouns, like we saw earlier. Things like he, his, them, it, these. Again, it refers back to someone or something that's been already mentioned in the text. You could also use the definite article plus noun phrase. So, for example, the children, the earlier insights, things like that. Again, you're referring to, say, for example, you mentioned a few children by name. You could then say the children, yada, yada, yada. Okay? Also, things that are called determiners. Some of them, much of it. Okay? These can also be used as references in texts. You could also not only reference a person, but describe their position, job title, or role in a different way. For example, I could say Dr. Mitra was a really professional doctor or physicist, for example. And then I could say the Indian physicist, yada, yada, yada. So when I say the Indian physicist, I'm talking about who? Exactly, I'm talking about Dr. Mitra. If I say Dr. Mitra was an Indian physicist, the radical educationalist. Now the radical educationalist is referencing, again, the Indian physicist, which is Dr. Mitra. Okay? So these are all ways to manipulate, basically, things that you've already used in the past by referencing them using different words and expressions. Okay? This might seem strange at first, but there's a good reason for why we do this. Good writers use referencing strategies to avoid repeating the same phrases. These strategies also connect different paragraphs within a text so that ideas and information can flow clearly and logically. Basically, what this means is, try to look at it this way. Imagine you're reading a story and it's talking about a boy named Mike. There was once a boy named Mike. Mike was 13 years old. Mike was 5'6". Well, not really a boy anymore. He's more of a man, but you get the point. Mike was dash, Mike. As you keep reading, you get sick of reading the same thing over and over. The word Mike, you need something to switch it up. And that is what good writers do. They use reference words or strategies so that they don't have to repeat themselves. I mean, even talking, if someone keeps saying the same thing over and over, you tend to get bored. So the way we combat this is we use referencing texts. So if I say Mike was an Indian student, for example, and then say he graduated with honors, things like that. That way you use references and you don't have to say the same thing over and over. All right. It also not only helps us to avoid repeating the same phrases, but also it helps us connect different paragraphs within a text. This way, ideas and information flow clearly, logically, and they make sense. Because if you've ever tried reading perhaps an essay or an article or something, and things are not connected, it feels weird and it doesn't feel right. So same thing, same concept here. We use references to refer back to what we were talking about and connect these paragraphs together. Okay? Now let's go to exercise 5. Here's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to reset this. We have the first paragraph, and what we want to do is these are jumbled. So these are not in the correct order. These paragraphs are not in the correct order. And what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and read all of these, but focus on reference words so that you can put them in the correct order. Okay? So let me actually zoom out a little bit. If you're not able to see it, just take a screenshot and zoom in on your own computer. I find that works quite well as well. All right. So now I'm going to complete the video as if you've tried to look at some of the reference words and look at some of the paragraphs and you were able to get the correct order. So let's go over them one by one. Let's start. Let me actually just zoom in a little bit so I can see. We have one, which is this one doesn't move, so the holes in the wall no longer exist. But Dr. Mitra, now professor of educational technology at Newcastle University in the United Kingdom, has a new vision. Building on the earlier insights about how children can organize their own learning, he has established 7 self-organized learning environments in schools in India and England. All right. What comes afterwards? However, despite a wealth of anecdotal evidence for the success of the method, some point out that the notion of autonomous question is as old as... Okay. These are rooms within schools where children can work in small groups, averaging 4 people per screen. At computers that are connected to the internet, the emphasis on group learning is key, as the earlier series of hole-in-the-wall experiments in India. Okay. So if you notice, where is it? I just saw it. Has a new vision. The emphasis hole-in-the-wall experiments, and these are the same hole-in-the-wall experiments that are mentioned here as well. So we're going to put this as second, and are free to wander from group to group to compare what each is doing. And then afterwards, as with the original experiments in India, the response from pupils has been extremely positive, and no, I think this one is not in the right place. However, no, not as well. This is pretty negative, so not yet. I feel like this is like towards the end. I would say some sessions a teacher is present but only as a mediator. His or her role is to choose which big question, for example, or why do we learn history? Again, this is based on the big questions that he enjoys including in his system. Is to be researched to encourage the pupils. So we'll put this in third. So there are rooms within the schools are free to wander from group to group to compare what each is doing. In some sessions, a teacher is present but only as a mediator. His or her role is to choose which big question. For example, what happens to the air we breathe in? Okay. And then after that, as with the original experiments in India, the response from pupils to souls has been extremely positive, and the methodology has been enthusiastically taken up and used by teachers in schools and countries as disparate as Hong Kong, Colombia, Australia, and the United States. I think this is in its own spot. This is perfect. And now that we've talked more about this, now we go to the negative part. However, despite a wealth of anecdotal evidence for the success of the method, many educators remain unconvinced about Dr. Mitra's ideas and skeptical about how innovative they are. Some point out that the notion of autonomous question-led learning is as old as the teaching methods of the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, and that only the method of researching the answers is different. Others note that task-based learning in groups has been familiar to language teachers since the 1970s. So this is the true ending. Right, so let's zoom out a little bit. So the first one is the stable one. The holes in the wall no longer exist, but Dr. Mitra. And then it keeps going in the correct order with these paragraphs. So these are rooms within schools in some sessions, as with the original experiments. And however, despite a wealth of anecdotal evidence, this is positive, and then the negative part. Okay. Let me see. Let me just zoom in a little bit. 6. What do you think of Dr. Mitra's ideas? Would they work in your country? I believe so. Yeah, I think, actually, before I do that, I would like you to pause the video, and I kind of got ahead of myself here. What I would like you to do is discuss your own ideas and think about Dr. Mitra's ideas now that we've read the paragraphs multiple times. I'd like you to think about the ideas. Do you agree with them, or do you not, and why? And also, do you think if they were to be implemented in your specific country, or in your respective country, would it work, or would it be something that is best avoided? All right. Again, I'm going to continue the video as if you've already done that now. Now I can share my opinion. I would say that I like his ideas. I think it's unique, something that is not used in the traditional old school way, and it teaches the students to be independent, which is something that I'm all for. So yeah, I think he has good ideas. Would they work in my country? Absolutely. I don't see why they would not work. I mean, you teach people to be independent, and they kind of get used to it. Yes, you might have students that are against the idea, and we actually had something similar to this back when I was in high school, where they tried to have us prepare lessons beforehand and go through books and research on our own, without having the teacher basically give us any information on the topic. And sometimes they would even ask us big questions and have us think about it. So I think that's very similar to Dr. Mitra's ideas. It wasn't the same case by case, obviously, but the resemblance was there. And I think that did us pretty well. It teaches you to be independent. It teaches you to think for yourself, perhaps look at things from a different angle. So yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't work in different countries. So yeah, that was my idea. Do let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why or why not? Okay. And on that note, this concludes the second part of our unit. I hope you guys had a good time. I hope you guys learned something new. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.